to the Damage Report. I'm Bret Erlich here with Brooke Thomas.
Look at that face.
Oh, look at your face.
Look at that face. We are here. You know who's not here?
John is in a self-imposed exile.
The namesake of the show.
I want everyone to take one moment and guess where John could possibly be. It is one of those three things.
Oh, this is like Carmen Sandiego.
What would your three things be for where John is if you didn't know?
Somewhere chasing, what's the character who plays John? So what's his real name? Kit
Harington.
Yeah, so somewhere stalking him.
Right, like setting up his house to watch Game of Thrones.
Yes, or that,
or at a board game convention.
I was just gonna say that.
Or setting up some kind of fun office activity. It's number two, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Anyways.
My favorite pastime is peeks at what John is looking at on his office computer.
Yeah, because he has three screens.
He's got three screens. It's so random.
There's a lot of things. There should be a post game on the main show where we just talk about what's on John's screens at all times. And like how they're set up and how he wears like glasses because he looks at so many screens that he
is so effortlessly innocent.
Yes.
Like he's just a good person and it's hilarious.
And this is the kind of stuff trash people talk behind his back about is how nice he is. Anyways, we have a lot of show that we're gonna get into. Brooke and I are gonna take you through it all.
Yes.
First, we're gonna start with the school beating and the new surveillance footage that's out detailing more of the event that you may have already heard of, and we'll fill in the details. Also, this crazy story from the Washington Post about sanctuary cities and how Trump wanted to punish his political adversaries by kind of floating the idea along with Stephen Miller that you might just take the detainees and dump them in his political opponent's cities like they're just props. Also, Trump's approval rating we'll get into. We're gonna talk about the National Action Network Convention with Terrell Jermaine Starr. There's a new heartbeat law, all that and more as we go on. And then we're gonna get messy at the end of the show.
We are gonna get a little messy, yeah.
We're gonna talk about just some extra stuff that we were thinking about. So let's get into it. We don't have a lot of time, so we're gonna get through a lot of these stories. Okay, first off, the school beating story. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was on January 29th, some footage taken by someone who was an onlooker at an event where there was just a young girl at a school and she was suddenly grabbed by police officers, dragged downstairs and beaten. And that first video surfaced a little while ago. There is new footage that we'd like to show you now of what happened at the top of the stairs. You'll see over by the stairwell, there is a girl just standing there and walking away before a police officer grabs her and throws her down the stairs. Ugh. So that's that. So, and then everyone congregates, and that is the first part of the surveillance footage. I mean, just your first reaction to that. She was just standing there, right?
She was just standing there, horrible. And then just like, I think, the audacity to just be willing to do that in front of all of those kids. It just shows kind of like your self-control. Yeah. It's scary.
And it continued down the stairs. So there's a reverse angle at the bottom of the stairwell. We're gonna show you that right now. It's about 20 extra seconds. This is getting dragged down the stairs.
This is a child. I think that's important to keep reminding people.
And so it starts there. Now, people had already at the top of the stairs congregated. People at the bottom of the stairs start coming around. And as you'll see, the police just start beating her. And it's very rough. And people from the school show up. And one of those people is the girl's father. So this happened at Marshall High School on the west side of Chicago. The video that we're showing you is obtained by the Chicago Sun-Times. So they're the ones who are making this newsworthy and getting it out there. So that's a big break to show these kinds of things. Now there is also video potentially on the officers themselves that are awaiting the body camera footage. But just to give you how it's reported from the Chicago Sun-Times, they say 2 officers involved in the incident also held the student down while stepping on her chest, but they didn't seek help from her father or other school personnel. Her name is Denigma Howard. She's 16 years old. She's from, she goes to this school in Chicago. It's rough. There's gonna be more developments on it, but just your take from this.
She was charged with assaulting these officers because they lied. They said that she initiated this, that she assaulted them, and instead what we see is a video. The only thing that saved her is this video. Fortunately, those charges were dismissed, but they took this little girl to court after what looks like abusing her. And then just to put it in perspective, so think about that. Police officers hurt a child, lied about it, had her in court, and then in this same department is supporting a lawsuit against Jussie Smollett for lying and faking the need for an investigation. It's just this all happens in the same town.
Yeah. And I wonder if the police officers are going to be sued for the legal expenses of that initial proceedings to try to bring the case. The third graphic, if we can go to the third graphic in the story, Denigma was initially charged, as Brooke says, with 2 felony counts of aggravated battery against the officers. The charges were dropped less than a week later. Quote, in the interest of justice, prosecutors said. Like, what a weird way to put it. In the interest of justice, there's a lot of stuff it seems they need to do.
And the importance of this acknowledging this trauma on this child, not only, I think just like being in that space where you have 2 men attacking your body and then hurting you. And then you got to go to court, and the fear of going to jail for this. There's a lot more than just this, was wrong.
Yeah, and the father was interviewed on CNN this morning, and he basically said, like, there's nothing I can do. He just had to stand there. The police didn't ask, once he says, I'm the father,
right.
The police didn't stop, and they told him not to intervene. And what is he gonna do? We saw what they did to a girl who was maybe said something, but there's no reason that you need to tackle a child and take them down.
Absolutely not.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our next story in this block. Okay. Washington Post has broken a story about something that was happening behind the scenes of the Trump administration having to do with immigration. Now, we all saw the standoff between President Trump and the Congress, basically saying what we need to do is find a solution for the border problem. And the Trump administration said, fund the border, I'll shut down the government. And Congress stood up to him. And in the wake of all that, Trump decided he would float this idea. White House officials first broached this plan in a November 16th email asking officials at several agencies whether members of the caravan could be arrested at the border and then bust, quote, to small and mid-sized sanctuary cities, places where local authorities have refused to hand over illegal immigrants for deportation. The White House told US ICE that the plan was intended to alleviate a shortage of detention space, but also served to send a message to Democrats. So basically, he was going to use these people as props and dump them on sanctuary cities. What do you think about that?
First, it's not even real retaliation. It is absolutely a retaliatory plan. But also, these aren't monsters. These are human beings who are trying to escape pain and danger and just trying to live like basic human beings. So putting them anywhere is not a problem. That's what we're trying to explain on a daily basis. But the fact that he thinks there's such a problem, this administration doesn't, they think, okay, we're gonna put all these boogeymen in your city. We do want them, but just the fact that he's using human beings as punishment while also punishing those very human beings, it's disgusting.
Yeah, then people are calling for comprehensive immigration reform, that the idea that Trump, and he's done this before basically to try to do some giant PR move to punish his political adversaries. He's done it with the tax policy. He's made it so that you can't write off your state taxes. So that basically targets folks like us in California and New York as some kind of punishment. The thing here is that people within his administration, even the ones that he hired because they were such toadies and yes men, said no to him. And the pitch back is like, May Davis, who's a White House policy coordinator, said, the idea has been raised by 1 to 2 principles that if we are unable to build sufficient temporary housing, that caravan members be bused to small and mid-sized sanctuary cities. There is not a White House decision on this. This is how it was pitched internally. And then I want to skip to Matthew Albence's quote where he said, the acting ICE deputy director said, not sure how paying to transport aliens to another location to release them when they can be released on the spot is a justified expenditure, not to mention the liability should there be an accident along the way. And so basically, it's so interesting to see the way that they shoot down his ideas because they're essentially put in a position where they're like, well, I can't tell him it's stupid. And I definitely can't tell him it's illegal to do these kinds of things, but I can tell him it's an unnecessary expenditure. And in the wake of people responding to him like that, he has basically gone through and gotten rid of all of them, going along with Stephen Miller's plan, according to many reports. We have to take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk to Terrell Jermaine Starr about the conference, the National Action Network conference. Don't go away, much more after the break. We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Hey there, welcome back to the Damage Report. I'm Brooke Thomas, sitting next to Bret Erlich. Neither of us are John Idarola, but he'll be back Monday, don't worry.
Not yet, but we're working on it.
We are working on it, indeed. We've got, I think, a pretty interesting interview coming up with Terrell Jermaine Starr. He's a senior reporter with The Root, specifically right now covering the 2020 primary, and he recently covered the National Action Network. That is Al Sharpton's organization, and there was a convention. And I think this year, it was pretty important, a lot of topics going on, a lot of presidential candidates there to pitch to black voters. So we're gonna welcome Terrell Jermaine Starr. Good morning, Terrell. It's good afternoon where you are, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely. Good morning to you out there.
So first off, can we talk about the importance of the NAN convention? Because in your opinion, I wanna know, because I saw last year actually, this was when I first even knew about the convention. You wrote an article and said that let me get it right, it was arriving just as civil rights progress is taking its biggest hit in decades. So what's the importance of the convention to you? The importance?
Namely, when candidates go to NAN, it is one of the few opportunities where presidential candidates or political up-and-comers have an opportunity to speak directly to black voters. It's a way to build cachet. It's kind of Reverend Al Sharpton's way of giving people the space to say, well, yeah, you are somebody who can legitimately earn our vote or not. That's the reason why everyone goes. And this year there were up to 12 candidates, and this is the most diverse pool, the Democratic pool that we've ever seen. And so it's more important now than it was in previous years because of all the stakes that are involved. In 2018, you had the rise of black women going to conference, not only black women, but other women of color, but the focus on black women. And so now people feel a bit more emboldened by asking candidates what they want and really pushing the conversation, namely around reparations, in order to certify whether or not someone is really BSing them or not. And so that was a question that Reverend Sharpton asked everyone. People don't believe that realistically it'll happen in the past 3 years or 4 years, but they want to know where their minds are to really gauge if they really are really about that life of black people.
So who was there this year? Because I think there's importance in that. Who was willing to show up as far as candidates?
All of the major candidates. So Kirsten Gillibrand, you had Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris. You had potential candidates, including Stacey Abrams. And you also had Mayor Pete from South Bend. You had Julian Castro. So pretty much all of the major people who stand a chance of winning were there. Most of them appeared on Friday afternoon and Friday morning, and I had an opportunity to interview some of them throughout the week. Also, let's not forget Cory Booker. I also interviewed him as well.
I know there's a big piece on The Root. Hopefully we'll have time to get to that. I want to know back to the convention also just really quickly. any highlights? Because this was an opportunity for all of these candidates to kind of make their pitch to Black voters. So any highlights as far as what they were saying for you?
Well, for me, not necessarily. It wasn't so much of anyone saying anything spectacular beyond what we expect Black people to hear in the obvious. Donald Trump is a racist and pushing back against the GOP racism. Like, that part was obviously clear. I think what was happening this year and what you notice within the crowd is people still are making up their minds on who they can ultimately trust, simply because there are so many people, right? And so I think this year what we saw was it had as much to do with how seriously the candidates are taking Black votes as it did with people respecting the Reverend Erlich Sharpton. Because keep in mind, all these candidates, the next time that they're going to get together is going to be doing a debate in June. And then there's in Miami, then you have the other presidential debates that are taking place in Detroit in July. So for all these people to come together for this conference, really, in fact, they came together and the schedule was chronically late, but people still stayed. It shows how important it was, how important the organization NAN is, and why people trust NAN as a place to really test their bona fides with Black voters. It was like a sample test of what's to come for Super Tuesday and the rest of the primary.
So Terrell, I have a question about reparations. So how are those candidates that you mentioned handling that issue, and who handled it best, and what made it a good way of handling the issue?
That's an excellent question, because let's face it, most people don't really understand the nuances and the depth and breadth of what the reparations are. Frankly, most people think that it's all about getting a check. And we all know that that's not true at all. It has everything to do with redlining. There's political elements to it that don't have anything to do with reparations, but they contextualize the discrimination and the marginalization of Black people throughout the decades and the centuries. And so I think as to who answered the question best, in my interview with Stacey Abrams, I felt like she was, and you'll see that interview Monday. She basically said that I am in support of reparations for Black people, but there needs to be a committee of people who are able to decide how that is best going to be carried out. Because I don't know all of the answers, and she was really, I thought it was really honest for her to say, I don't know all the answers. And then the other people pretty much spoke the same tune. Julian Castro, in his interview with us, we actually broke that news. He was actually one of the first person to be open to reparation, what it looks like. So Julian Castro, even though he's not scaling as high in the polls as other candidates, he's the one from the very beginning that's been very explicit about it. The only person who really did not explicitly in detail come out in support of it, state her opinion more specifically, was Senator Amy Klobuchar, and I pray that I'm pronouncing her name correctly. But everyone pretty much is on board, but I think now the next step is for people to really articulate what reparations are, so people can really understand and really gauge how serious they would actually pursue a reparations proposal if they are elected into office.
Terrell, there is never enough time to get into everything I want to ask you, I want to talk about with you, but I do want, as we wrap up, I want to tell everyone to go to theroot.com, check out your interview with Cory Booker, because I think his responses may be surprising or eye-opening to a lot of people. I think the response I've seen from your interview has been that it was a different Cory Booker than maybe we've seen so far.
It took time.
Okay.
You have to push it. Once we directly asked him, he got to the point.
Well, I think it was a good interview. So everyone go to theroot.com, check that out. Terrell Jermaine Starr, always happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so we're taking a break?
Yeah.
I never know when we're taking a break.
This
Bret
is the time when that happens. Yeah. Sorry, I have the answer key right here. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about a new heartbeat law that got passed in Ohio, what it means, and what the future is for that. Welcome back. there is a new law that has been passed and signed by the governor of Ohio, and it's known as a heartbeat bill. And essentially it outlaws abortions after the heartbeat of the child has been detected, which can be as early as 6 weeks. And for a lot of women, the issue is that's before they know they're pregnant, essentially. So now known, NPR reports, now known as the Human Rights Protection Act, SB 23 in the state of Ohio, outlaws abortions as early as 5 or 6 weeks into pregnancy before many women know they're pregnant. It is one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. It also criminalizes, in many senses, the doctors who would carry out an abortion ban by the law. It says doctors who perform abortions after detecting a heartbeat would face a 5th-degree felony and up to a year in prison. The legislation also allows the state medical board to take disciplinary actions against doctors found in violation and impose penalties up to $20,000.
I just want to put something in perspective for people watching this and people who are going to constantly hear 6 weeks pregnant. That is your period being late 2 weeks.
And does that happen a lot? I'm a boy.
I'm sure.
Yes.
And that was a weird way to answer that because I'm a girl. I don't know.
But that's like.
But
yes,
2 weeks,
I'm married.
2 weeks, anything, right? It's like 2 weeks. That's not. It's not like when people say 6 weeks pregnant. That's how seriously we mean that many women don't know they're pregnant yet because it means your period is late 2 weeks. That's it.
Yeah, which is
nothing.
Signed by the male. Originally, the bill was proposed by a dude and signed into effect by Governor Mike DeWine. And here's his statement on it. The Republican governor says the essential function of government is to protect the most vulnerable among us, those who don't have a voice. Government's role should be to protect life from beginning to end. The ACLU has a response. They said they're already going to launch a lawsuit on behalf of people like Planned Parenthood and other women's groups and clinics that perform abortions throughout the state of Ohio. They say this legislation is blatantly unconstitutional and we will fight to the bitter end to ensure that this bill is permanently blocked. Similar bills to this have been passed, and it's a trend. This is a trend, and the explicit reason for that trend is to find a way to get an increasingly conservative Supreme Court to hear specific types of cases against Roe versus Wade with the express purpose of overturning it. There's other ones that are trigger bills that are that they've passed that will go into effect in the event that one of these challenges does overturn Roe versus Wade. It's rough. Here is the response of one of the state legislators to the concept of being sued over this bill. Will there be a lawsuit? Yeah, we're counting on it. We're counting on it. We're excited about it, said State Representative Ron Hood. Just the idea to be excited about something.
About something like this, and I think any logical person hears a law as ridiculous as this and as shocking as this, knowing that abortion is legal in the United States of America, that there is a law, it is legal. Any logical person hears this and thinks, well, of course, the ACLU is going to go after that. They're going to fight that, they're going to win. The ACLU says, yes, we are going to fight this to the bitter end, but then we have to remember the bitter end is our current Supreme Court. And remember what that looks like, and remember the writings of some of the judges that President Trump has put in there or wants to put in there. And a lot of it is focused on how they feel about women's reproductive rights and about abortion. And this should scare you.
Yes, there's 2 points that I want to point out. So one is you can say that it's in the hands of the ACLU, but how did this get passed in the first place? It passed with a vote in the in the legislative body of 56-40. Now, here are some facts about the most recent election and how the gerrymander affects how the state legislature is composed on a party basis. The 2018 analysis found that Republicans won 52% of the votes in Ohio House races, yet 62% of the seats. So getting over 60, essentially, or some number like that, they have the ability to pass this in and have no say from the opposing side, even though the way the legislative body is set up, thanks to a gerrymander, you get way more seats than you would intuitively think you have any right to because they draw the districts so crazily to favor Republicans. And it's 2020. There will be another census. The last time this was drawn was when they had a Republican legislature and a Republican governor, so who's to say they're not gonna do it again? Now, the people of Ohio have tried to vote recently to make it to a less partisan approach to this kind of thing, but it doesn't seem like it's gonna work, or hopefully it works next time, because in the U.S. House seats, the Republican candidates won 52% of the votes, but 75% of the state's 16 congressional seats. So even though there was a blue wave, the Republicans got, 23% more of the makeup of the congressional seats than they had any right to.
Yeah.
It's rough. So keep an eye out for that. And the other trend is, I just want to play one really quick video of the president. Here is why it started.
What should the law be on abortion?
Well, I have been pro-life.
I know. What should the law? I know your principle. That's a good value, but what should be the law?
They've set the law.
But what crime? What crime is it?
Well, it's human life.
No. Should the woman be punished for having an abortion?
Look.
This is not something you can dodge. If you say abortion is a crime or abortion is murder, you have to deal with it under the law. Should abortion be punished?
Well, you'll go back to a position like they had, where people will perhaps go to illegal places.
Yeah.
But you have to ban it.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
So that was a weird moment in the election, in the campaign, but that's the kind of thing that Trump is sniffing out there and trying to pander to.
This is the plan the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, next story.
All right. So there was another CNN town hall last night. This one with Julian Castro, someone who, I think he has a fairly big name. People know his name. They know his brother. They know who he is. But he isn't leading any polls. He talked about a lot during this town hall: reparations, immigration, foreign policy priorities. Let's just get into some of this. Is what he had to say about reparations.
I believe that we have never fully addressed in this country the original sin of slavery. And that because of that, we have never truly healed as a country. And I've said that, if we compensate people under our Constitution, if we take their property, why wouldn't you compensate people who actually were considered property and sanctioned as property by the state? And sometimes people say, they'll ask me, well, nobody today was a slave owner, and nobody today that's living was a slave. And I say, if somebody is out there that's 25 years old and they say, why are you talking to me? I never owned slaves. I'd say that, that 25-year-old person never fought in the Pacific. That 25-year-old person never had a hand in writing the Constitution of our great country. That 25-year-old person never marched with the women who were marching for the power to vote. They didn't march at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. But when that 25-year-old person goes around the world, in many places they're treated with great respect because they're an American. In other words, even though we weren't there in past generations, we've inherited a lot of moral assets. But you know what? We've also inherited some moral debts. And one of those debts that we've never paid is the debt for that original sin of slavery. So I support legislation that Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Jackson Lee from Texas, has introduced that would appoint a commission to study reparations. And that commission would make a recommendation to the president on how those reparations should be done.
Okay, so of course I picked the longest video in the history of videos, but he talked about a couple of other things too. He talked about, he supports the legalization of marijuana. He was asked if he had any advice for Trump. His advice was follow the law.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Well, as you pointed out during that video, Trump is already saying he's doubling down on dumping illegal immigrants or, sanctuary asylum seekers into sanctuary cities. So he's doing that. Just on the reparations thing, do you think that's ever gonna happen?
No, I don't. And I think, honestly, I don't. I think it's a respect thing. I think that candidates are put in this position where they just have to acknowledge that maybe it should be a thing or that something needs to be done. But I think there are a lot of super progressive policies that are never going to happen.
Right. But I think when people say reparations, like which has not made its way really seriously until now into any discussion, I see that as a lot of. That's why I asked this question to Terrell. Was just, do you think that they're ever going to really address it? Is it going to be this like, I'm going to say these 8 words in a row, and it's going to end with we need to study it, and then nothing's going to happen?
Yeah, at least in our lifetime.
I don't know. You guys should check out that town hall with Julian Castro. And then also you should check out this Monday for members, we're gonna be streaming or we're gonna be responding to the Bernie Sanders Fox News town hall. So check that out. It's gonna be at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on the Young Turks. Okay, we gotta take a break. When we come back, a lot more for you. Don't go away.
Hey there, welcome back. We've got another interview coming up for you. We're going to bring in Josie Duffy Rice from the Justice Collaborative to talk about a blueprint for a safer and more just America. And this was also recently featured in the New York Times. Josie is an attorney and writer. So you know what, I want to jump right into it. For our viewers who may not know, can you explain the Justice Collaborative?
Yeah, we're an organization that works with local elected officials, organizing groups, and other people interested in criminal justice reform to really pass progressive policies and bold policies to end mass incarceration.
So you all put out this report, and I want to read the first couple lines just word for word because I think they're pretty powerful. It says, our criminal justice system is responsible for balancing the need for security within our communities with the freedoms and opportunities that every person needs to live a dignified life. Right now, across the country, we are not striking the right balance. Can you just break that down for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more common knowledge than it ever has been before, right? That we're in the midst of what is a very serious mass incarceration crisis in this country. We overcriminalize, we overpunish, and what we're actually doing is not making our communities any safer. We're actually putting people in more harm's way. When you face criminalization for being poor, right? For not having a place to sleep at night, for not dressing the right way in some places, you can get cited for, not having your pants pulled up, or, putting your trash can on the wrong side of the road. When almost everything is included in how we think about criminalization, we're not any safer, right? We're actually at so much more risk because we have the state bearing down on us, over criminalizing people and putting them and then jailing them and imprisoning them in systems that don't make them any better when they're out. So that is, I think the idea of the criminal justice system taking care of public safety has for many years not been the case.
So what are the solutions to these kinds of problems? When you have, you say that the problem is that you're being criminalized for being poor. How do you go about fixing that?
Yeah, so we presented in our blueprint over 30 kind of policy solutions that are split into kind of general categories. And one of them is stop making poverty a crime. And one way to do that is stop criminally prosecuting people for not having enough money to pay their bail, pay their fines and fees that they're getting as a result of being criminalized. So often in this country, people are just wrestling with the criminal justice system for years because they don't have a couple extra $100 or extra $1,000. And that should not be the way that we criminalize people in a country that prides itself on being a country of liberty and freedom.
And then when it comes to your messaging, what messaging do you find is the most successful in resonating with people that need to be part of affecting this change? I guess that's my question, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a question I've been trying to answer for 4 years now. And that we have, I think it depends on the population. I think it depends on who you're talking to. I say that as a journalist. But I would say that what we find really effective and what we think really works is talking to people about what makes them feel safe, right? Does it make you feel safe if your child is at school and gets in an argument, not even a physical argument, and might be arrested, does that make you feel safe? Does it make you feel safe to know that you might have neighbors down the street who can't pay a couple $1,000s fine and are waiting to be picked up by the police? Does it make you feel safe to know that your kid could get shot in the middle of the street and nobody would, the police officer wouldn't be held accountable? These are things that reflect, all of us want to live in a world of safety. All of us want to live in a world where we can raise our kids, where they can make mistakes, but generally not spend 20 years in prison for something small, or any time in prison for something small. We want to raise our kids in a world that is both free and safe. And right now we don't have either, really, because of our criminal justice system. So, I don't know anybody that doesn't want those things, and I think that's what we're trying to translate with these policies that we hope not only state officials or local officials, but also presidential candidates will really engage with.
So I guess the question is, how do people help? How do people out there, if they want to? I love the message, and you've laid out in this blueprint kind of how we need to address it. But what do we get to do? How do we help out with the process?
Yeah, so I'd say a few things. One is that we're at a really exciting time, right? We have I heard the conversation just now on reparations. There's an entire potential for presidential candidates to be taking on issues that they previously would not have if they understand that they're resonating with the larger public. And I think some of these are huge ones that we can encourage them to take on and signal that they're important. One of them being the right to vote. So, as part of our blueprint, we advocate for no one losing the right to vote because of a criminal sentence or conviction. That is, you should be able to vote in jail. You should be able to vote in prison. You should be able to vote the minute you're out. That is something that we really embrace, and we hope that presidential candidates will embrace as well. And Bernie actually already said something about this just last week. The other big way, I think, to encourage people or to prove to people that they really have the power to make change here is to look at who your local sheriff is, look at who your local DA is, ask questions about their policies, find out how much bail they're charging people who can't afford it, right? Find out who they're sentencing to prison, who they're turning over to ICE, who they're collaborating with, what they're prosecuting, and the return on investment for knowing these things and encouraging the DA to change their practices is massive. I can't tell you how many people, how many DAs we've seen be voted out or have to change their policies over the past just 5 years because people are really starting to pay attention to the power of those jobs. You should know who has the power of criminalization where you live, both on the local level and the state level, and you should hold them accountable.
Josie, thank you so much. I think everyone should check this report out, A Blueprint for a Safer and More Just America. There's a point in there that you guys break down, like as far as solutions you were talking about, Bret, about the importance of treating children like children. And I think everyone should go and check that out because that takes me back to our very first story of the show today, what happened in Chicago. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's me. Yeah, we're coming back. It was supposed to be, it's me. I'm here. I'm here. I'm still Brooke. What's
going on, champ?
I was waiting for Bret to talk, but it was just me. And
yeah, but they wiped to you so nice. We're going to take a break.
It was so nice.
Yes. Welcome back, everybody. So we're getting ready for the show today, preparing. John's gone. Everybody's just trying to do their job the best. And Brooke kind of was just like, this read is bonkers. And the question was, what read was it? So could you please share with us?
Yeah, so it's wild. That's really what I said. Like, this is wild.
You didn't say bonkers?
Maybe.
Maybe I said bonkers.
Maybe you translated it to bonkers, yeah. But Bret Easton Ellis, he wrote this book, and believe it or not, the book is simply called White. So we've gone from American Psycho to White.
Right.
And in it, he kind of breaks down his frustrations with the state of America. But it's not what you'd think. If you follow him on Twitter, it's exactly what you think. But if you're logical, it's not what you think.
Right, if I just like Robert Downey Jr.
Right. So I just want to go through some of the quotes because the interview was just a wild back and forth where he has these really strong convictions about specific things regarding Trump and how people respond to him, but he can't really articulate it.
Right, and Bret, just to fill in all the links, he wrote American Psycho, Less Than Zero, basically all those like movies with James Spader and Robert Downey Jr.
Yes. Okay, let's go into the first one. This is in his book. When did people start identifying so relentlessly with victims? And when did the victim's worldview become the lens through which we began to look at everything? This is about the movie Moonlight.
The movie Moonlight, really?
He's so frustrated by it.
Really? So he sees that and he's like, first of all, there's a problem with this piece of writing.
Yeah.
There's no white people in it having trouble with how much cocaine they have. That's it.
So, and there's more. Also in the book, he's talking about his frustrations with how people have responded to Donald Trump's comments about Mexicans and that they are sending their worst, their rapists, their murderers, and how a lot of people rightfully responded to that. He's frustrated with that. And he says his answer as to why is because it didn't seem to be truthful and it seemed to be exaggerated and said over and over again. You think I'm defending Trump somehow. I am bothered by people using that one thing 2 years later. So then, of course, the reporter comes in and like, well, wait a minute, exaggerated. Do you think Trump is racist? He says, I do think birtherism was racist and the Tea Party was an abomination. The hysteria over Trump is what I'm talking about. It's not about his policies or supposed racism. It's about what I see as an overreaction to Trump. And then we get in this back and forth where the reporter says, sorry, you keep going back and forth here between racism and supposed racism. Do you think he's racist or not? The response is, and I know it's a lot of words, sorry about that. Yeah, probably he is. Because when I was doing research on him way back in the 1980s during American Psycho, the policies he and his father were talking about in terms of not letting people live in certain buildings and the overreaction to the Central Park jogging case was annoying enough to make him a figure in American Psycho, where Patrick Bateman sees him as the father he never had.
So, this is like someone saying, it's not a big deal. It's just my house and it's on fire. Like there's flames all over it. It's not a big deal. It's like you gave all the reasons that this is a problem.
Right.
And then we're shocked that people are treating it as a problem.
And it's just a word jumble. You are saying, yeah, he's probably racist, but what I'm frustrated about is how you people are reacting to that.
That's what's so weird. It's like, I think the biggest issue that Americans, or one of the biggest issues that Americans can suffer from, I guess, is underreaction. It's apathy. I saw sometimes you see a quote on Twitter and you're like, I didn't know I followed people who just generally motivate, but it was like the opposite of democracy is apathy. And that's the thing with Trump. And that was my big fear going into a Trump era was like right now, it's like you're in a room that smells like a fart. And you're like, later I'm not gonna smell the fart. The question is it because it doesn't smell like fart in here or have I just gotten used to it? And like, I need someone from another country to open the door and be like, oh my God, how are you used to this?
Yeah. There's more. He kind of comes to the defense of Roseanne Barr. He's saying that she denied knowing Valerie Jarrett was black after tweeting racist stuff about her. And so his response to the reporter bringing that up is, did she say that she didn't know she was black? And the reporter reminds him that he wrote that in the book. And then he says, yeah, right. I quoted her and he it just, the whole thing was almost like him wanting to side with racism, but not wanting to say, well, it's because I am one.
Listen.
So I have to just wrap it up with that actually, because I think it's just hilarious how it ended. The reporter says, look, thanks so much for talking. He says, it's interesting to have that back and forth pull in an interview. The only problem, however, is that I am not that political. And so when we have this conversation and you confront me with certain things like this, I really am, I have to say, at a loss. So are we, Bret. So are we.
It's so weird because like there are issues like with mental health and stuff. There it doesn't matter what race you are, you still have mental health issues. You need help with that. But like a lot of his literature is about how tough it is to be a rich white person, and it's just not that tough, especially in his books. All right, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts to you for watching. Rate and review the podcast. We're both going to be on the main Young Turk show later today, so check that out.
Yeah, we are. That's right.
Rate and review the podcast, facebook.com/The Damage Report. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time on this show.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.